Earlier last week, Blizzard made an announcement revealing new cards to the Classic set, as well as 2 new entries for the Hall of Fame. The Classic cards don't interest me a huge amount. They are mostly on the weaker side as they should be, with 2 exceptions that I consider perfectly justifiable. What does pique my interest is the reveal of Vanish and Mind Blast going to the Hall of Fame, as this is the first time in a long while that Blizzard has made a decision that I strongly disagree with. But before we get to the exact reason of my qualms, there's another issue. Preluding this reveal, Blizzard detailed the concept of class identity and how it reflects positively on the game of Hearthstone. And while I appreciate the attempt made with this explanation, it's lacking in a key concept, and that perhaps is why I am so frustrated at this current predicament. So today, let's examine the truth about class identity, and what Blizzard is and isn't saying about it. Disclaimer, I'm an internet idiot, not a game developer. While I do believe everything I say, I could easily be mistaken, so remember to take my criticism with a pinch of salt. Anyways, let's go. Let's start with the basics. Every class has certain strengths and weaknesses, areas of the game where they are capable of excelling or incapable. Hunters can go to face, mage has excellent spells, paladins can buff minions to be stronger than they initially are, etc, etc. If one class could do everything, then, well, there wouldn't be a need for 9 different classes. This basis creates the dynamics that allow for diversity in the game. And this idea is basically what Blizzard spent their entire announcement explaining, albeit in a more long-winded manner. What Blizzard fails to mention is that this is all by their design. As the printer of the cards, they decide class identity, and have altered it to their liking over the years. Take, for example, Death Rattle. Originally, this was a basic concept thrown into just about any card Blizzard wanted, at least until N'Zoth came out. It was around then that Blizzard decided to change their approach, moving Sylvanas to the Hall of Fame, and giving some classes access to stronger death rattles than others. I have nothing against this move. It was overall a wise decision. My point instead is simply that class identity is malleable, and can change based on the whims of Blizzard. It's for this reason that I'm not concerned with the specifics that were outlined in the announcement, such as how warlocks are good at card draw and how druids aren't good at destroying big minions. Everyone knows this already. Spending the time reiterating the specifics is, quite frankly, a waste. With every expansion, Blizzard has the opportunity to alter class identity to be more to their liking, and they have done so in the past. That's a core idea that I want you all to remember. The developers did not emphasize this with their announcement, they instead described the concept and then moved on to say that Vanish and Mind Blast run counter to the ideas they present. But do they really? How does Vanish support and contradict with the rogue class identity? And how does Mind Blast similarly measure up to Priest? Let's examine these one at a time, starting with Vanish. This card certainly served as an enabler for combo decks, simultaneously clearing the enemy board while also allowing for Battlecry and similar effects to be reused. But to claim that this doesn't align with class identity is ridiculous. The concept of returning minions to hand while also impeding the opponent's strategy in a temporary fashion is iconic rogue. But penniless, rogues are supposed to have the weakness of board clears. I'm sorry, do you sincerely believe that Vanish negates that? The only time this card has seen serious play has been with the quest The Caverns Below, which seems tailor-made for synergy with this. Even in Pogo Hopper Rogue, which notably doesn't work very well, most players only run 1 copy of this card. Additionally, considering the existence of cards like Fan of Knives, it makes more sense to simply call board clearing a limitation for Rogue, and to not move the card to the Hall of Fame at all. A weak board clear that does some of the things that rogues like seems perfectly justifiable in a class that's weak at board clears. Moving it to the Hall of Fame just seems like overkill. But perhaps I'm wrong. Perhaps this board clear covers up a weakness in a future rogue deck, and Blizzard is planning ahead to ensure that weakness is exposed. Or maybe the card synergizes too strongly with other cards Blizzard has planned. However, I think it's much more likely that the developers are making a mountain out of a molehill, getting rid of a weak rogue tool for an insignificant reason. But hey, if it turns out I'm wrong, I'll happily admit it. However, now we turn to Mind Blast. Look how they massacred my boy. Let's start with a question. Did Mind Blast support class identity? The answer is actually yes, it did. While Blizzard claims that Priest isn't supposed to have direct base damage, historically that has not been the case whatsoever. Cards like Shadow Reaper Anduin were designed specifically for that purpose, and plenty of cards from the Classic set still operate in the same way. Akanai Soul Priest, Shadowform, and Prophet Velen all existed alongside Mind Blast, and contributed significantly to their identity as a bringer of both light and shadow. Plus, the concept of Priest generating huge damage from hand is not a foreign one either. The Divine Spirit Inner Fire combo is iconic Priest, and only requires a minion with high health to pull off. Sure, needing to have a minion on the field is an extra limitation that Mind Blast decks don't have, but to say that this combo isn't damage that priests are able to deal from their hands is blatantly false, as is saying that it doesn't contribute to the priest class identity. To put it perfectly blunt, Blizzard is lying. Here's the truth about this Hall of Faming. The developers had a perfectly well-defined class identity for priests, and then decided they didn't like it anymore. Have you noticed that there's been a sudden drop in combo decks over the course of this expansion, particularly of the OTK variety? That's no coincidence. Blizzard has decided that the control combo deck type is not one they want to dignify with support. Hence a lack of Shudderwalk Shamans, OTK Paladins, and Clone Priests. And it turns out the concept of a control damage class naturally demands a combo deck. The thing is, Blizzard can't come out and say that they're trying to weaken combo decks, because then everyone who plays combo decks would be furious. So they hid behind this explanation of class identity. But for the case of Mind Blast, that explanation is false. Priest has always been a combo class, combining large damage with powerful control, and Mind Blast has always been an integral part of that plan. The developers just decided to change that definition because they could, and it suited their needs. Now, obviously I'm upset about the misinformation, but there's slightly more to it than that. Not only does this change limit combo, it also shuts down new deck types for Priest. With cards like Madame Azul and Evil Conscriptor in the card pool, I thought Priest might be able to develop a tempo strategy in future expansions. Obviously this would be different than decks like Tempo Rogue, utilizing the perseverance of minions as well as fun card combos. I actually put together one of these decks, utilizing Archmage Vargoth, Armored Replicate, and of course, Mind Blast. When the buff to extra arms was announced, I allowed myself to hope that this new flavor of Priest would finally be able to shine. Turns out, nope! Apparently, the concept of Priest being anything other than control is a forbidden idea at Blizzard HQ. Either that or they think this new deck type will eventually become more powerful and overwhelming, despite ample evidence to the contrary. That's another thing, Blizzard. Taking away a key win condition for Priest when they're currently incapable of winning? Dick move. The icing on this cake is Mind Blast's replacement, Radiance, which is frankly a terrible spell. But everyone knows that already, so I won't stress it too much here. Even if this card healed for as much as 8 health, I doubt it would define any sort of meta. I justified a lot of decisions that Blizzard have made over the years. Even the few ideas that I disagreed with the developers on, I eventually came around to. But here, I don't see it. I hope the new cards you print for Priest are strong and interesting enough to justify this choice, Blizzard, because right now, it seems like you crippled Priest's class identity and justified it by saying you were preserving their class identity.